Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday. It's almost Shabbos. Exciting another Shabbos and Parshas Kisisa, Parshas Para. Exciting Shabbos ahead of one of the four Parshias, a celebratory time, an exciting time in this lead up till Pesach. I'm going to share a Rashi with you from today's Aliyah, which is the sixth Aliyah of Parshas Kisisa. Yesterday, we spoke a little bit about the aftermath of Chet HaEgel in yesterday's Aliyah, the full end of the forgiveness process for the Jewish people is that Moshe intercedes on their behalf. Moshe asks God to understand and to see more of him. Hashem agrees. Hashem reveals his 13 attributes to him, 13 attributes of compassion and of mercy, allowing Moshe to have this tool to pass on to the Jewish people that they could use for the rest of time to continue to be able to ask for forgiveness even after they mess up many, many times over. We saw yesterday, Hashem, Anihu Kodem Shechta, Anihu La'achar Shechta, that God is so solid that his relationship with us remains the same even after we mess up. Very empowering thought that should encourage us always to try to do tshuva and come back to Hashem because he is there waiting. In our Aliyah today, the sixth Aliyah, the Torah transitions to speaking about some of the mitzvahs that we are supposed to keep as God renews his covenant with us, including the mitzvahs of the holidays, and including the mitzvah of Chag HaMatzos, 3 weeks away from today. In the midst of this passage speaking about the holidays and about Pidyon Haben, Pidyon Bechor, the Torah has this short pasuk, which is a little bit hard to understand. Sheishis Yamim Ta'avod, Uvayom Hashvi Tishbos, Becharish uvakatzir tishbos. For 6 days you should work. On the seventh day you should rest. From plowing and harvesting you should rest. So it seems to be a pasuk about Shabbos, even though this whole passage is not about Shabbos at all. It's about the holidays. It's a little bit hard to figure out how it fits in here. And there are so many other passages in the Torah speaking about Shabbos. Why do we have this little pasuk nestled in here in a section that's not about Shabbos at all? So the end of the pasuk is also hard to understand. The general prohibition of labor on Shabbos and the ability to work for 6 days is clear to us. But why does the Torah single out these two acts which are forbidden on Shabbos as opposed to any other? There's 39 malachos which are usher on Shabbos, 39 prohibited labors. Why point to plowing and harvesting, which are only two of them? There's a machlokus in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah as to how to understand the end of this pasuk. Is the charish and katzir that you're supposed to desist from, to rest from, talking about plowing and harvesting that you rest from on Shabbos? Or is it talking about plowing and harvesting that you rest from during the Shemitah year? The coming year is going to be a Shemitah year. So is it the plowing and harvesting that you're not allowed to do on the Shemitah year? It wouldn't be odd to have that here because Tishbos is not only Shabbat, to cease, to desist, to rest. It's not only language used for Shabbos psukim, but also certainly used for Shemitah psukim as well. It's a complicated sugya in the Gemara why we would side with one explanation or another. For the moment, we're going to go with that. At the end of the pasuk here is speaking about Shemitah, the Charish uvakatzir tishbos. Now, you'll ask me, how does it fit with the first half of the pasuk about Shabbos? We can leave that for another time. But the end of the pasuk here perhaps is talking about Shemitah, the Charish uvakatzir tishbos. And Rashi comments on why these two actions are singled out over here in terms of Shemitah and the prohibitions of Shemitah. B'charish v'katzir tishbos. Lama nizkar charish v'katzir. Why are these two acts singled out over here? Yesh mirabosenu omrim al charish shel erev shvius hanichnas l'shvius v'katzir shel shvius hayotze lemotze shvius. Perhaps this is talking not about the prohibitions of Shemitah, which are enumerated elsewhere, right, in much greater detail. We don't need them here in this pasuk. Perhaps it's simply enumerating them here to tell us that in addition to all the prohibitions of the Shemitah year and working the land on the seventh year, there's also some prohibitions like plowing that set in earlier, before the seventh year, at the end of the sixth year, as you lead into the seventh year, and certain prohibitions of harvesting, which set in after the seventh year, b'motzei shvius, into the eighth year, so that the Shemitah year is straddled on both sides with some prohibitions like charish, like katzir. So the prohibitions of Shemitah we learn in this pasuk spill over into the year before a little bit and into the year afterwards as well. Why is that important to know? Rashi tells us, Lo lamdecha shemosifin mechol al hakodesh. Very important. Aside from the practical side, it teaches us a great lesson, which is that we always strive to add holiness into the mundane. If that 7th year is holy, the 6th is mundane, the 8th is mundane, we don't just suffice with sanctifying the 7th year. We allow the sanctity to spill over a little bit before into the 6th year, a little bit over into the 7th year. We always strive, we always push ourselves to infuse Kedusha and holiness into the mundane as much as possible. Vikach mashma'al. That's the meaning of the first of the pasuk as well. Sheshes yamim tavod uvashviz tishvos. That's the meaning of the first half of the pasuk when it comes to Shabbos as well. Avoda sheshes hayamim shitarti lecha yesh shana shecharish v'katzir aser ve'ein tzarich lomar charish v'katzir shel shvius sherei kvar nemar sadcha lo tizra. When the pasuk says 6 days you should work and on the 7th you should rest, you might think that both in Shemitah and Shabbos, the 6th is completely mundane and the 7th is completely holy. So the pasuk comes to remind you, no. Charishu v'katzir tishbos, that there's prohibitions before and after because we add on to Kedusha. We add on to Kedusha of Shemitah, we add on to the Kedusha of Shabbos as well, as described in the first half of the pasuk. In its totality, the two pieces, which are a little bit disjointed and harder to understand, and we're not fully elaborating on them now as the Gemara does, but putting it all together, Rashi basically tells us what this pasuk is teaching us is that there is a principle of mosifin mechol al kodesh, of adding holiness into the mundane. And that would apply to the Shemitah year, where we add holiness before and after, and it also applies to Shabbos as well, where we take from the holiness of Shabbos and add on to the week before and to the week after. That principle is known as Tosefes Shabbos, adding on to Shabbos. We always start Shabbos a few minutes earlier than sunset, and we always finish Shabbos a few minutes later than when the stars come out. And we do that specifically to uphold this principle of always adding on holiness, of always rising in holiness, of always striving to take the mundane and to elevate it to new levels. Those days and times and years, like Shabbos, like Shemitah, help us to do that. They are big blocks of Kedusha, where there is so much of it that it's easy to spill over into the time before and after. But we really have to take this principle and do it all the time and strive, even in the moments when we don't have this big bubbling over source of Kedusha, to also bring Kedusha into our lives, into our moments, into our days, and be able to elevate the mundane to greater and greater levels so that we can come closer to Hashem. I wish you all a great Shabbos ahead. Don't forget to add on to Shabbos before and after and uphold this principle this week as well. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom.
Have a good
Thank you,
one.
Rabbi.
Take
Shabbat
care.
shalom.
Be well, everyone.